If you're new to woodworking, some projects can seem frustrating. Why is this not fitting? So to avoid that, let's look at some simple projects you can build with some scrap wood. For number one, if you happen to have some scrap 4x4 left over, here's a great way to turn it into an awesome looking little owl. I first cut the wood down to about 6 inches and then I stained it with a really dark brown stain so that there's a big contrast between the standard wood and the stain. After giving it some time to dry, I took a belt sander and created the nose. All I did was sand it down so it's a nice smooth finish going about halfway down the body. You don't want it to go too far or it won't look right. For the eyes, I just used a 1-inch Forstner bit and I just barely drilled in just deep enough so that you get past the stain and get to that real bright colored wood. And the best part about this project, you can easily customize it with color, size, shape, and whatever you would like to fit your area. After building that first project, if you still have some 4x4 left over, let me show you what to do with that. For number two, let's make some great looking coasters. These are literally just 3/4 inches thick, cut off of that 4x4 that I showed you. Now, if you notice that one of these is a little bit darker than the other, but these are the same exact piece of wood. The difference is the coating I put on it to protect it. The darker one is a shellac and the lighter one is a polyurethane. The great thing about this is that you can batch these out, make a ton of them at one time, use different finishes, and then people have a large variety to choose from. If the solid wood is not your thing, you can always make a slotted coaster. This was just a 1x4 that I cut square. I cut slots in one direction, flipped it over, and cut slots in another direction, and it looks really cool with all the little holes in it. This can work great in a lot of locations. For number three, if you have a 2x4 left over, let's make some good door stops. Okay, yes, those are really boring, so let's make something really cool looking. This is a very simple project. Just draw it any shape that you would like, and then just trace it out with a jigsaw or a bandsaw to get, in this case, a bird. I've seen cats, and I've seen plenty of other animals, and of course, drill out a place for the eye. One thing you might notice about this particular one, it is a little thin. It's probably better to make them about the thickness of a 2x4 because they're less likely to get knocked over when you're using them. But overall, this is a great little project and your family will love them. For number four, I got a question for you. Do you like carpenter bees? If you're a woodworker or a builder, I would hope not. These bees love to drill into wood and lay their eggs, thus destroying your structure. And to stop those bees, I created a simple little trap using a water bottle, a scrap 2x4, and a staple to hang it. If you're interested in this project, I built this in a previous video, and yes, it does work. I'll put a link to that video in the description, so make sure you check it out. Moving on to number five, you can build a really simplistic scratching post for your cats. I have 3 outside cats, and this is the one they use full time. This is really simple to put together. The base of it, I believe, was a 2x10 that I just cut a small angle on and screwed them together. The back side is just a 2x4. It's like a little climbing / sitting post that's up high for them. They love to scratch on this carpet. Just about every time I walk outside, they are just going at it on this carpet fragment that I just stapled on. For this climbing post, I originally had a string. As you can see, it's hanging everywhere. I originally had it going all the way up the post and across the top, and they just destroy this. They love to scratch at that string and just go at it, even just gnawing on the wood. So if you build something similar to this, make sure you use untreated wood. Do not get pressure treated wood because you don't want the chemicals in that to hurt your cat. If you happen to have some thin scraps left over, you can make yourself some brain teasers. You can find these little designs online, print them off, and cut out shapes. For example, I have 3 different sized triangles here, a square, and a parallelogram. Man, that's hard to say. In any case, this right here is supposed to turn into a small little house. But I have to admit, after trying this for a little bit, I can't figure it out. I guess I'm just not that good at brain teasers. Maybe I just need a nap. And I looked up the solution, and this is what the house looks like. Cool little project. For number 7, let's make a Swedish butter knife. I was at a recent event and they handed me this little piece of wood and several of these little carbide cutting tools that go into a Dremel and told me to cut out a Swedish butter knife. As you can see, the design is very simple. It does have a nice sharp edge and it is made out of wood. So over time these will discolor and probably go bad with the butter being embedded into the knife, but that's okay. They're really simple and easy to make and a great little project that you can share with family and friends. For number 8, we're gonna make a simple bottle opener. This right here is just some hardwood, and I would suggest hardwood over softwood because it's less likely to break or deform. Now, you need to make sure that one end of it is wide enough so that the bottle cap can easily fit into it, and then we're gonna drill a hole out for that. I just used a Forstner bit, but you can use whatever you'd like. The other side, you probably want to taper it down, make it a little bit more narrow so it can fit around your hand easier. To actually open a bottle cap, we're going to use a heavy-duty washer with a large screw holding it in place, and that'll be what is used to pop those caps. By chance, do you sit at a desk? Then there's a good chance that you could use a footrest to help reduce some of those aches and pains in your legs and your lower back. Let me show you. This is a great beginner project because it is so simple to assemble. It has two main side rails cut at a specific angle, and then just strips of wood that go across the top to create that footrest. Each of those strips are held into place by a screw, and therefore if by chance you break one, you can easily remove it and add a new one in place. Now, you can also stain this to match your carpet or to match your furniture, and therefore make it match really nice. For number 10, how about we build a small sturdy step stool for around the house? This is one of those projects that most beginners could build and be proud of, and you can show it off and show your significant other that you're actually learning something and be real creative. This project was built with one board, and I tested it by jumping up and down on it a few times, and it held my weight just fine, so it should be great for the average person. If you'd like to see a little bit more on this video, I'll put a link to the original video in the description, so make sure you check it out. For number 11, how about we make a set of earrings? First off, you'll have to buy the little hook for your ear on Amazon as a little kit, especially the one that has the little screw that goes into the ornament here. But I'm going to show you how to make these ornaments out of wood. This is a great project to use as real tiny scraps of hardwood that normally would just be thrown in the trash. But don't do that because we're going to use them right now. At this point, we need to figure out what colors we want in our earrings, and we need to glue the wood together. But be careful putting two dark woods together like this. It makes it a little bit harder to tell them apart. But if you were to put the light wood in between, they really stand out. And here's a couple ornaments I've already put together. These are a little bit larger ones, these are a little bit thinner ones, and you can make any combination that you would like. Now some of you might be thinking, hey, wait a minute, to cut stuff out that small, that can be very dangerous. And it can be, but there's actually a very safe process to cut stuff out this small and even smaller than this. And I created a video several years ago, and I'll put a link to that in the description, so make sure you check that one out as well. For number 12, how about we create some custom cloth napkin rings? Again, we chose the woods that have a nice little contrast, and we glued them together. I then use a couple different size hole saws to actually cut this out. This is 2" and this is 1 3/8. The 2" cut out the outside, and the smaller one cut out the inside. Now I cut these using some remaining wood left on the bottom here so I could have full control as the saws were being used. I then went over to my miter saw or a table saw and then cut this out so you can have a nice little napkin ring. And please remember to put some kind of protective finish on this, or once you have food or liquids hit this, it'll discolor and not look very nice. For number 13, here's a great way to get your kids involved. My son actually made this a few years ago for his mom, and he literally cut all this out by himself. Now I did get him started, I think, on one of the letters, but other than that, he literally cut it out and made the design and the shape. Everything was all his own. Now we used a bandsaw to cut this out. Now if you don't have a bandsaw, that's okay. You can use a jigsaw and of course clamp everything down and watch over them just to make sure they don't get hurt. But overall, this is a great way to get your kids involved and let them create something that will be a lasting memory, not only for them, but for their parents. For number 14, you should look into making a birdhouse. You can make them in so many different fashions. This right here was just a log cabin version I just recently built. I also have a video of a more traditional one. I'll put a link to that in the description just in case you're interested. But birdhouses are great because they don't have to be perfect. I mean, these are going to be outside in the weather, and well, they're just going to be slowly deteriorating and slowly discoloring while they're out there. So if they're not perfectly put together, that is okay. Birds live in trees that are not perfect, that have holes and cracks. So if you have a little extra room and little spots that are not exactly put together, don't worry about it. The birds will still love them. For number 15, you should also look into making a bird feeder. Now this will be a great addition to your bird houses, and it will also draw those birds in so you can easily watch them and enjoy those as well. This particular bird feeder was built with one board. It was actually a cedar fence picket. Now I went to a lot more detail in a previous video putting this together, and I'll put a link to that in the description, so make sure you check it out. Depending on the type of scraps you have left over can really determine this next one. So for number 16, we're looking at wall art. Here recently, I built several hexagons for my wife because it's her favorite color. That way she could display them up on the wall and have just a really unique design. Now don't let this limit you to just shapes. I've seen abstract art, I've seen maps. Really just depends on just your creativity, the scraps you have, and if you can conceive it in your head, you can build it. So go do it. For number 17, let's look at building some wooden scoops. Now, I built these using just a bandsaw. Now, of course, this right here is a very large unit. You don't have to have one this big. You can have the smaller benchtop models. They will take a little bit longer, and the scoops will be a little bit smaller, but that's okay. It's great practice, and it's a great way to just get out in your shop and make something. Now, of course, these scoops can be used in the house or outside. You can sell them. You can give them away for friends. I suggest just making some. It's a great way to just get used to using your saw and building something really cool. And of course, I did a previous video on these scoops, and yes, there will be a link in the description. For number 18, let's look at making some bandsaw reindeer. Now, of course, this is a benchtop model, which will be probably a little bit easier for you to work with because we're talking about deer that are only about 4 inches tall. Another great option for these deer is the variety of colors that you can choose. Depending on what types of wood you glue together or paint you use or stain you use, whenever you're putting your wood together, you can get a variety of colors out of these deer. Also, you can change the height and dimension of them. For example, I made a bunch that are about 4 inches. I made some that are about 6 to 8 inches tall. And then I have one that's about 18 inches tall. Of course, I had to use my bigger bandsaw for the larger deer, but the other 2 sizes you should be able to make on your benchtop version. Also, if you go to that previous video, I have some templates on there that allow you to cut everything out really easily, and I'm giving them away for free, so go check it out. For number 19, you might want to look into some of these scroll saw or bandsaw puzzles. They are cut out of one piece of wood, and if I can remember how to do this, they slide apart in a really unique fashion, creating a really cool looking design that you can challenge your family and friends to put back together. Now, the great thing about this, it is cut out of just one piece of wood with a template. So just make sure you have a square or rectangle block of wood, and you can make these really easily on your bandsaw or your scroll saw. So, have fun challenging your friends. For number 20, if you happen to be interested in the lathe, well, one of the challenges I came across was building stuff inexpensively. I mean, you want to build something nice, but you don't have the practice to do it yet. So therefore, going out and buying a $100 piece of wood and trying to turn it on the lathe just seemed very, well, scary to me because I knew I'd probably mess it up. So I found a way that you could actually turn construction lumber on the lathe relatively inexpensively. And so that way you could get a ton of practice with just your basic lumber, and once you got good with that, then you could grab that $100 piece of wood and feel confident turning it on the lathe. Now, of course, I have a video of this process in the description, so make sure you check it out. Get confident on the lathe, you can make some really cool items. For those of you who are still watching, here is a bonus 21. Take some of those scraps and turn them into some nice tools. For example, this right here was a long piece of, I believe it was oak, but it was badly warped, had a bunch of bug holes, which there's still 2 there. And this right here just was basically trash wood. So I cut it in half and I glued it together, and I was able to come up with a decent push stick that's heavy duty and I don't have to worry about it breaking. And since it was basically trash wood anyway, turned out to be a pretty nice little tool. I've also took some lumber. For example, this is just some 3 2x4s here, and I turned it into a nice little push block that I can use on a table saw or whatever I need it for. So just look outside the box. Take those scraps and turn them into something useful.